Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Helping People Perform podcast. I've got a really exciting conversation today with Uyen Vo, trainer and facilitator and owner of Fierce Consulting. So welcome, Uyen.
Oh, thank you so very much, Paul. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, great to have you, and I really look forward to a conversation, see where we go and see what your angle on helping people perform is and what we can learn from you. So always keen to learn. And before we get into some of the bits that you do, and I've noticed on your website, you've got a great tagline of get more done, save resources and reduce burnout. So that gives us some real great stuff that we can delve into a bit later on. I was hoping in the beginning for our listeners to just get a bit of a flavour for your background. You know, what have you done up to now that's got you to where you are today?
Oh, very good question. So my education is in economics. I have a degree in economics from the University of Cambridge. And unimaginatively, I went into the City of London, into banking with that degree. So my career is sort of a game of two halves so far. So the first half was very technical, analytical. I was a corporate treasury person in Lloyd's Banking Group.
Wow.
And and it was very enjoyable for a while until the financial crisis, which you may recall, and that made it even more interesting, if not necessarily enjoyable.
Right.
And then glossing over some details of my career, the latter part of my career has been focused on helping people in their work environment. So I started out in-house working at Lloyd's in employee engagement, looking after the Treasury department, ranging from performance management to career development to talent retention to comp, all of those flavors of things. And then I finally decided to start out on my own when I began Fierce Consulting, my little business, and then started servicing clients mainly in the corporate and banking world, probably because I speak their lingo, I understand the culture, and probably my network is strongest in that field. And I haven't looked back, to be absolutely frank. So that's my background.
Fantastic. And do you because I hear a lot of parallels with my background as well, from a sort of working in corporate and then working on corporate a little bit, so having those internal improvement roles. Did you ever go out with the intention of going in that direction, or did you just go with the flow and take the opportunities that came to you?
Yeah, I have no plan. I wish I could say, given that I do a lot of work on project management, that I had this grand plan and I left and I knew exactly what I was doing, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I was feeling it out. I was pretty burnt out, to be frank, when I left corporate.
Right.
And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew it wasn't continuing in that line. In fact, I was exploring reducing my outgoings, my financial outgoings, to a level where I wouldn't have to work again.
Okay.
So I don't know if those of your listeners are aware of something called FIRE, which is financial independence, retire early. I was an advocate of that principle. So it just turned out that sort of in my first year of so-called retirement, or just relaxing after really hard work, a colleague, ex-colleague, continuing friend.
We could edit that.
Yeah. She called me up and said, would you like to do a consulting gig? And I was like, oh, yeah, actually, yeah, why not? It'd be a nice little bit of pocket money and it would be interesting to do. And it just built from there, frankly. And I've just been muddling my way through ever since.
So that brings us to where you are today with Fierce Consulting. Am I right in thinking you've been going for a number of years now? Is it around 2016, if my LinkedIn stalking is correct?
You know what? I don't even know.
Yeah.
It's crept up on me. I'd have to look when the company was incorporated. But yeah, 2016 sounds about right. Yeah, quite probably.
And so tell us a little bit about Fierce Consulting. You mentioned those three things of getting more done, saving resources and reducing burnout. Is that the main focus of how you help people?
Yes, I would say my approach is sufficiently flexible so that when consulting with my clients, I identify core issues, core desires. I
Right.
can adapt my style, my content to meet their particular needs. So I can be as flexible as working on communication, or right over into how to be more empathetic, to project management. So there's not kind of particular niche in that respect. I just happen to have won a lot of business in project management, which
Right.
is, yes, that's kind of part of what people, that's part of the demand side of the market. Maybe that's just what's needed.
Mm.
Um, but the reason why I have that tagline is because that's what I feel, that's what I sense people want at the moment. They're feeling very overwhelmed.
Mm.
There is still very high headcount cuts, high numbers of vacancies across all sectors, frankly,
Yeah.
and people are tired. And even more after the COVID, they've had a reassessment of their life priorities. And they're asking questions of themselves and of their family and of their partners that
Mm.
perhaps they've not done for a long time.
Mm.
So that's why I have that tagline. It doesn't necessarily mean I do particularly one thing. It's more about addressing that general concern that I see
Right.
in our society.
So you, in terms of working with your clients, you would just understand their needs, understand their challenges, and then you sort of bring a tailored approach to what you think can support their needs at that time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. What often happens in the sales process is a client will come to me and say, I'm looking for this type of training.
Right.
Right. And I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the people that you who subscribe to your podcast will be familiar with this, those who are in this industry, because when you start having that conversation and digging deeper,
Mm.
actually, that is not the thing they need.
Right.
There is something greater going on. There's something more systemic that
Mm.
they need to address. And part of that sales conversation is helping them identify that, and sometimes helping them to accept that.
Mm.
See, that latter bit is actually quite hard.
Mm. I
Mm.
know in previous conversations we've had, we talk about the need for having those conversations and challenging those things a bit deeper. And I know from conversations I've had in the past that you can almost do yourself out of work in those areas, can't you? Because it's like what you need is something else, and I'm maybe not the person for that. How have you come across those situations yourself, and how's that been for you?
Totally. I don't know who it was, but there is a tagline is that it's not training is not usually the thing you need.
Right.
And for a trainer, it's like a horrible mantra. But a lot of people perceive training as this magic bullet.
Mm.
It's not. It's not going to be the main pillar that's going to fix your culture.
Mm.
Right? It's there. Very often I'll be brought in for improved communication. Let's take that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you get to the bottom of it, there's some just really toxic behaviors,
Mm.
very distortive behaviors happening usually at the very senior level. Right. And me coming in and talking about how to lay out an argument or how to present is that's not going to fix that.
Right.
But that's a very difficult conversation to have with the leader
Mm.
that's brought you in for the training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a tough one. I know, and it's often one of those things where just to first of all, it's hard for that individual client to necessarily open up to that and
Mm.
realize that in the first place. And even if they do, there's all sorts of complications. Budget, what's the need at the moment? What's the plan as it goes into a wider plan of action? I know I didn't delve into this, but you tend to work with larger institutions and financial institutions and things like that, right?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, and they're often, certainly from my experience, and I know you know my wife who's in the banking sector as well, in that field. They've got a very good plan of action, often for the full year. Whereas a lot of the smaller institutions may be a bit more reactive and a bit more agile in that term with a small a in terms of their needs at that time. So yeah, it can be a really tough conversation, can't it? And as you say, training isn't always the answer.
Yeah. And then there's also the art of the possible, right?
Mm.
So when I was earlier on in my career, my puritanical streak demanded that we go straight to the root cause, and there's no point doing anything unless we were actually really dealing with the issue at hand. But what I kind of reconciled with is that, okay, the chances of me dealing with the toxic behaviors at the CEO level is rare, is going to be small, right? But what can I do at the level I'm allowed access to help them? So if I can make things even just 10% better, isn't it worth doing? So so there's a sort of realism, art of the possible type angle as well.
Yeah, I've often said, don't let better be, or don't let perfect be the enemy of better. You know, you can always make those improvements, and if you are making just a little change to some people, even if they are in that environment, then hopefully that will give them more resilience, more aptitude to be able to deal with the situation and the environment that they're in.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And so how do you, what do your engagements tend to look like? Are they, more workshop training? Do you do one-on-one coaching? Is there a bit of a mix there? How do you tend to engage with your clients?
But predominantly my work is through workshops. So there will be small groups, maybe between, sometimes as small as 3, sometimes as large as 30 to 40. So depending on that group size, there'll be variability in how interactive and intimate the session can be. And I also have an arm of my business in consulting. So that's when I work directly with clients, helping them develop their strategy or understanding their culture, etc., etc. So that's kind of done on a more bespoke one-on-one level.
Right. Oh, fantastic. And just out of interest, because it's something that I did a few years of facilitation as my core piece when I was living and working in New Zealand, before I actually got any training in facilitation in terms of how to facilitate. And the conversations I had with a number of people were, well, I've been doing this for years, but nobody's ever really taught me how. And I'm always intrigued. Have you ever been taught how to facilitate? Is it just something that's come naturally?
Very good question. No, I have learned it through the school of hard knocks.
Yeah. Often the best way to learn, yeah.
Yeah, you get thrown in the deep end, you have to figure it out. I think observation is really important, listening, the ability to reflect afterwards. Look, not every of my sessions have gone great, I'll be absolutely honest with you, but I have learned from every single one. I also have a tribe of very, very experienced facilitators who keep me on the straight and narrow, who I can consult with when I am concerned with a particular thing.
Right. Oh, awesome. And that sort of takes us nicely into this sort of second question, which is, how do you up your own game? Where do you go for help with your performance? You mentioned a sort of tribe of facilitators and supporters there. Do you go to others? Do you have people either in your business? Is it just yourself in Fierce Consulting? Do you have others, associates, that sort of thing?
No, Fierce Consulting is just me.
Yep.
And from time to time, I will collaborate with other one-man or one-person businesses for larger contracts, or just for interest and variety. Frankly, it's fun working with other people. And that will form part of my tribe. So there is a group of people. We are called the minglers, the mingling of the minds, and we meet every few months, mainly on Zoom because we're dotted around the world.
Right.
And we support each other at a very deep, friendly level. We each run our own businesses, or we are in this type of area of work, and we counsel each other, we challenge each other, we advise each other. We are very transparent with each other. So sometimes I find with smaller businesses, people are very cagey about sharing financial information, for instance. And yet we know when entities share financial information, we get more fairness in pricing, right? More consistency. So certainly from a diversity perspective. So, I'm always very keen to, sit down and share with new people that are joining the business, and I'll show them how I do it. So that they don't undervalue themselves. So that's definitely one way to help people perform. But I think I'm not overly fussed with performing, actually. Perhaps it's just the way I have learned to understand that word.
Right.
For me, performance feels like a degree of pressure and to excel. And with the way I want to live my life, I'm not entirely sure I need to excel that much anymore. Certainly not to put pressure on myself. I want to have a a calmer life. I think I'm at that stage.
And do you think that approach and that attitude helps you and has helped you with your engagements and things like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there are things that I will not negotiate on. So I always work extremely hard to ensure that my clients get high quality work, my devoted attention, the best of my thinking, and all of the resources I have to hand. So that those are things I never compromise on.
Mm.
But I guess I'm thinking of, the pressure we get sometimes as business people to, build it bigger, so
Right.
when are you going to expand, and each year your revenue has to be bigger, and you join these business masterminds where you're drilled to have this very fantastic marketing and the tagline and all of that, and I'm like, well, do I really need that? Do I need to push that hard to increase my revenue year on year?
Mm.
What does that mean? What do I give up as a
Right.
consequence?
Yeah.
Perhaps there's other things in my life, like gardening,
Yeah.
like my beloved gardening, that I prefer to do. So yeah.
Oh, nice. And is that something like gardening? I know I've talked to other people. Jens Heitland in one of the earlier pieces talked about running and exercise and how that really helps him to sort of cement his thinking and have a bit of freedom from thinking. Is gardening the thing for you?
Absolutely. Gardening is the thing for me.
Right.
Um, so it is where I go to feel safe. It's where I go to feel happy. It's where I go to be creative. It's where I exercise my skills as an engineer and my proclivity for mechanics. So I love inventing little things and building things. And I get a lot of analogies from gardening into the world of leadership and management.
Right.
The art of right plant in the right place. That
Right.
is a very common phrase we have in the gardening world. And I think about how we choose leaders and how we recruit or promote people.
Mm.
Um, we need to think about putting the right person in the right spot. And we're not so good as a society at identifying those criteria and slotting people into the right pockets.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know. I was talking to somebody recently about the sort of farming analogy, which has got a lot of links. Obviously, the sort of you sow the seed, you nurture. You don't tell a plant to grow. You're not there saying grow more today, grow more. You've given them the conditions to grow. You are, nurturing, making sure the soil's right. You're giving them, making sure the water's there. Yeah, and then you are allowing them to, come up as their own sort of ways of growth, really. And that sounds similar to the gardening world in some ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. And so in terms of your clients or the people that you want to work with, the things that you would like to do, are there any things, any organizations, individuals, groups that you would just love to have the opportunity to engage with and use your skill set to maybe help them perform?
Oh. I said earlier that I don't have a particular specialist subject, although project management has been my sweet spot. And I'm not particularly focused on a sector or industry or organizational size, even though I have been funneled into institutions. But I think where I am unique is how I play my background of technical ability and precision with a massive sense of fun and humanness. Right. So, I went to a good university, I got a good degree, I excelled in a pretty tough industry and a tough role. I can hold my own in most conversations.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't feel the need to be all fancy or serious at work. I don't think any of those things contribute to my ability to be successful in the working world. And I feel sad when I meet people in corporate setting who feel they have to put on a particular image or demeanor in order to survive. And they're not really being their authentic selves. And we've lost, I think a lot of workplaces are quite inhuman or inhumane. And I don't know why we have allowed ourselves to get into that situation. I think we stumbled into it over 100 years of industrial development.
I
And
think
go ahead.
I was just going to say that the point that you made earlier on about what's been ingrained in you about performance, and you challenging that. I don't think a lot of businesses do that, or they're very narrow-minded in what performance is. Performance is the financials, it's the growth, it's the shareholder value. Very important, but it's not the be-all and end-all, is it? There's what you achieve, and there's also how you achieve it. I think that's a really important part of that's success. Success is not I've got the results at the expense of all the of my people or the expense of the environment, whatever it might be. I think we're now coming to much more of a world of the success is the business results with the corporate responsibility results that go along with that. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think we need to be having that conversation at the shareholder level and at the investor level, the pension level.
Right.
So I think about the pressures on a CEO of this quarterly reporting and having to deliver these results. Why is she having to deal with that? Well, look who owns the business.
Right.
And what do they expect? Okay, so it's predominantly going to be investment funds and pension funds that hold these assets. Okay, so why are they driving for performance? Well, that's my pension, that's yours and my pension fund. and we log in periodically and go, what's going on? Why has it not gone up? Right?
Yeah.
So, and yet we are the employees, or we are supporting the employees that are potentially suffering as a result of that culture. That hamster wheel. We really need to step back and ask ourselves, what is our expectations in terms of retirement? Are we living far, far longer than we ever anticipated, right? So if I'm thinking I start work at 20 and I want to retire at 60, but I'm going to live probably to 100, I'm having to finance practically, so 20 to 60. So that's how many years? Help me with my math. 40 years of work.
Yeah.
I'm going to live
years of not work. Yeah.
Right. That doesn't work. That effectively, I would end up having to need such giant pension returns in order to finance that. And we're not talking about it.
No, it's very much the elephant in the room, isn't it? With the society that is aging and but not necessarily working or plowing the money away in order to support that. It's a tricky one. Yeah. An amazing topic just in itself, really. But other question that I like to ask people as well is who would be your ideal person or team or organization that you could learn from? If you could sit down, be a fly on the wall, or have a cup of coffee with an individual, where would you want to be and with who in order to learn more about that could help your own performance?
Oh, my own performance, my personal performance.
In whatever context you see that.
Okay, so I'm going to define performance as my ability to live life to the full.
Nice.
And I would love to sit in a room I'd like to go to a nursing home. And I would like to have a bunch of older folks who are nearing the end of their life, who've had very diverse, colorful lives. And I want to hear, I want to listen to what they have to say. Yeah. And I want them to tell me I'm being an idiot here. I want to be like, no, you've got it all wrong, love. This is how it works. And this is how it fits together. And you don't need to worry about this, but you do need to worry about that.
Right.
I think those are the types of people I want to spend time with.
Nice. So just learning from that direct lived experience.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's, I mean, certainly with the people that we're talking about have gone through, if people are in their 70s, 80s now, then they've lived through all sorts of things over the last century. And, I used to have some great conversations with my gran, who was lived into her mid-90s, and the diversity of what they've lived through, the good times and the bad, and how they've coped with that and what's gone on is, it can be really humbling and also educational for what do you actually define a success for your life, and what are you going to do about it to move forward?
Yeah, I can bet you my bottom dollar that in my dying breaths, I'm not going to be thinking about the P&L of Fierce Consulting.
I wish I'd have done one more workshop now.
Exactly. Like, oh, I forgot to say that in that project management exercise. No, I'm not gonna be worried about that. I will be thinking about the people I helped and the feedback I periodically receive. Someone says, oh, thank you so much for that one thing you said in this one workshop. It really changed me. It really changed the way I thought. I'm like, you know what? That makes a difference. That's nice.
Yeah, and I think if you're anything like me, one of the reasons I've gone into that field is that's the bit that's, let's be honest, it doesn't happen very often. Even if you're doing a great job all the time, you don't always get that feedback, and the positive feedback at least as well, to say what you said, what you did really got me thinking. It really changed the way I look at things. It got me doing something differently. But when that happens, that for me, that's the energy levels, the batteries recharged, it's all good to go again.
Yeah, it all makes it worth it, doesn't it? So I guess that's the lesson for us, right? Maybe we should send an email to people that have hosted training or coaching for us that we haven't talked to in a long time. Maybe an old teacher. Yes, okay, if you're listening to this podcast and you can think of somebody that made a little difference to you, be it an old boss or something, just give them a note, because it makes such a difference.
Yeah, a really nice scent. I like that. And if people want to find out more about you, about Fierce Consulting, what you do, where can we go to find out more?
Oh, given that my social media game is appalling, I'm not entirely sure. Well, I'm sure in your podcast notes you will have a link to my website so people can learn a little bit more about me and see what I look like and the sorts of stuff I get up to. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. And I think I even have some sort of old Facebook page for the business as well. But good old-fashioned email would be more than sufficient.
Awesome. All right. Well, I will definitely put those things into the show notes, and we'll make sure that people know how to get in touch with you, how to reach out if needs be, and find out more. Maybe engage, and you never know if this is the sort of thing that you're looking for, that really human connection to addressing the problems that you've got right now. Then reach out to Uyen and give her a shout, and I'm sure you'd be always open to having a chat about what you can do to help people.
Oh yeah, I'm always open for a chat. Frankly, there's chocolate digestives involved. That was one of my key stakeholder engagement tips: is bring biscuits. You'd be surprised what one can achieve with biscuits.
Fantastic. Well, on that amazing note, you don't get much better practical tips than that. Let's all go off, have a cup of tea and a biscuit. And Uyen, thanks so much for being on. Really appreciate you coming along today. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, then please do give the podcast a rate, review and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me at paulteasdale.co.uk.